So thank you so much for joining this week's episode of Gain and Glow, a healthy lifestyle podcast with me, Vanessa.
And me, Crystal.
So we're going to go ahead and make it kind of our thing. We're going to start you guys off with our dope quote. So, Crystal, what dope quote do you have for us this week?
Well, today's quote is the beauty is in the butterfly. The growth happens in the cocoon. And that's by Sadhguru, who is a well-known philanthropist among many other things, not any other things. But yeah.
I like that. It's so true. The process is where the work is done. And the cocooning process can feel painful, but there's a beautiful outcome, typically.
Right? We gotta put the work in to get the results.
Exactly. And one of the best ways to work towards that and to get through your cocoon phase is meditation.
Oh, yes. You guys know I love my headspace. So that's what today's episode is going to be all about. Vanessa's a little bit like early on in her meditation journey. I'm a little bit further on, but I wouldn't say I'm a pro by any means. And so we're going to kind of share our experiences and also give you guys some insight into why meditation is so beneficial.
Yeah. And first and foremost, this isn't paid content. We're not sponsored by Headspace. They're not affiliated with us in any way. We just use Headspace. So just to put that out there. Also, if somebody like works for Headspace, we're not trying to say that they pay us or anything. But yeah, Crystal started using Headspace. You started using it, and we've talked about meditation a lot, and I think I probably admitted it in the past, and I'll admit it now. I haven't historically been that great with consistently meditating, and it's something that I've tried to get better at. And Crystal, you've turned me on to Headspace now, so I can officially say I'm a beginner meditator. But I've really liked it, actually. So for me, especially, it's extremely strange. Meditating for me is just odd because first and foremost you have to sit still, which is not something that I do often. And then you have to like clear your mind, which is
That's kind of the point.
right, which is so foreign.
It is.
That is so foreign for me. So I know like the first time I've tried to do unguided meditation in the past. Let me start there. Was not successful. And it was because I actually didn't know how to meditate, which is kind of funny to me now because you think, oh, meditate, you just like sit there and you hum or like whatever, well, I learned from TV. Okay. I'll be honest. I learned how to meditate from TV, and turns out it's not the same. It's not the same. So it was like really odd for me to sit there still and like clear my mind. But on Headspace, I started out from basically like beginner mode. So it actually, the first like 5 meditation sessions legitimately were just teaching me how to meditate. And it's funny because I started the very, very first one. I made a game plan. I was like, okay, I'm going to start my morning with meditation because that's supposed to be like a really good practice, right? To get your mind right for the day. And I wanted to do meditation, and then I was going to do yoga that day. So when I started the meditation, I got like 30 seconds into it, and I was sitting on the floor crisscross, and my back started to feel tense because I was like trying to sit up really straight and be very like prone, and then my eyes were like struggling to stay closed because I was focusing so hard on like closing my eyes. And I did it though. I stuck with it for the whole 3-minute session that I chose. And then it's funny, even though it was so odd and so foreign for me, I still actually did have a better yoga practice afterwards. And I was actually more even keeled during work. So even though I like struggled through it and I felt so weird, I was like, that probably was not effective because I just obviously I don't know how to meditate, right? It actually ended up helping. And so then of course that helped me keep the momentum. So now I've been trying to make it my regular practice to do a headspace meditation in the morning, and then I follow it up with my workout. So like whether I'm doing yoga or kickboxing or whatever, it then I start my day. So I'm getting used to it now.
That's great. I'm so proud of you for doing it first thing in the morning too. Like I've listened and read like so many successful people's tips for how to be a great person, right? And so many of them it the biggest like the most important thing is to take time for yourself immediately in the morning. Don't check your messages. Don't check your messages. Your
Don't
messages.
check your messages.
Don't check your messages.
It bears repeating.
Yeah. Don't look at the news. Don't open an email. Like, just don't. Because you should really take care of yourself first. And for me, I've been trying to get more helpful habits, and that's literally like brush your teeth, put your clothes on, step outside. Even if you don't walk out of that driveway, step outside, take a few deep breaths. So I've first set up as the very first time I made meditation more of a routine is actually when me and Vanessa had first met, probably right before we had first met and started working together. Way back when, like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And what I would do is I was really stressed out because before she came, I had a person had quit, and so I was doing a job of like two people, and then I found Vanessa, and my life changed forever. I was like the easiest person to train. We had like one other person before her, and I was like, "Oh, you get it? You're helping me? Oh my God. Bless you."
I didn't lie on my resume.
Right? She's like, "Yeah, sure, sure." But I would use my breaks at work to go into a promo room that nobody would go into unless they were kind of showing a client around the office. And I would shut the door and I would hide behind the wall so that nobody going in or out of the building could see me in there. And I would take 5 minutes to meditate with the Headspace app. And I had the free version at the time. And they kind of give you a couple courses that you can click on and just kind of work through. And honestly, you can repeat the same course over and over because it's all about the practice. And I would sit there and nothing gives you anxiety like having headphones on in an office in a room where anyone could walk in at any time. But that was the only place I had. So I did that and honestly, it made me feel more relaxed just going back to work. It was kind of like I had wiped my mind, not completely clear, just got some of those thoughts out of there and balanced my energy. Like I wasn't in that stress mode of focusing and checking emails and answering the phone and walking over the printer and doing all those things. It was really just gave you a minute to yourself to kind of help you center. And that is like a huge, huge thing. And I came across this article from none other than Harvard, the Harvard Gazette. And what I found so interesting about this article, I'm not going to read it all because we don't have time for that. But studies involving mindfulness has jumped from one study between 1995 and 1997 to a whopping 216 studies between 2013 and 2015. And I feel like that just shows us how far behind we are in the way that like Americans should be practicing mindfulness in general. Like whether or not you connect it to spiritual the realm, like the Eastern countries have been doing this obviously like way longer, and only now are we looking into its benefits. And also part of the study, it was showing that or one of the studies is that a doctor took pictures of someone's brain with an MRI. Basically record it's a magnetic resonance imaging. It's MRI. And it's basically taking a picture of your brain and what's happening in your brain. And so they showed that when people who meditated over 2 months before, like scanning before and after, that people who had even stopped meditating after those 2 months had the same level of like having a little bit less brain activity, like a little bit less like flare ups in the mind of what's happening through because they had done that consistent practice. And I just found that it was so fascinating because I've started and stopped making meditation. Like meditation hasn't always been a regular thing for me, and recently I had been making it a goal to do it at least for 3 to 10 minutes before I go to sleep. And whether or not I would be ready for it, my husband, since we're going to sleep at the same time, would remind me like, "Hey, did you do that? Don't you want to do that?" And so he would do it with me, and then it started making it easier for him to go to sleep, and he noticed that for himself, and so now it's kind of something that we do together. But also and it's just kind of improved our ability to go to sleep. And like Vanessa had said, it improves her ability to start her day like with like a positive intention. And then she goes and accomplishes her workouts, which it's like if you give yourself too much time to think before when you wake up or when you go to sleep, you are messing things up for yourself. Like you do not need to think about anything else but what action can I take right now to benefit myself so that I can wake up great or I could go to sleep great.
And you know what I found out too? I found out that when I meditate before my workout, like before yoga or before kickboxing or whatever, I'm so much more mindful of what my body is doing because I do prefer to work out in the morning, but that doesn't mean that I'm not tired. I'm very tired these days. So sometimes when I'm that tired and I try to get my workout in, my stance is not great, my posture is not great. My form can get really rough, and when my form gets rough when I'm kickboxing, I hurt myself. I pull muscles or I strain my hips or something when I'm trying to kick. Like if I'm not mindful, it's not a good workout. It's not beneficial. It can be damaging, and I've experienced that through kind of getting lazy and just doing it as like I'm just gonna do this because I have to get it done, right? But then when I meditate before, I feel like I'm so much more at peace. And even though I'm obviously still tired, it's not like it wakes me up like that much. But I'm so much more mindful of what I'm doing and what my body is doing that I found that I get a better workout in. Like at the end of it when I clock it on my Apple Watch, I burn more and I stay more consistent with my stamina. And I'm more focused on my form instead of just like, oh my gosh, I got to get through this. So it's improved like just how I function in the morning.
That's really awesome. That's such a good point too. It's not necessarily about um it's not about changing your mind. It's about understanding your mind and like helping see what you're doing more clearly. So when you finish a meditation, you've kind of put yourself in a nice relaxed state, whether or not your mind is racing. They call it monkey mind. I mean, I am not going to sit here and pretend that my mind doesn't race throughout meditations, like at all. But if you can, sit and go through the process and just commit to sitting through the process, then you'll get out there and then you'll focus on things like your form instead of focusing on the energy of, oh, I just have to do this. And I think that really translates on both sides. It's like once you're kind of calmer, your energy isn't going to be geared to go negative right away. It's going to be like, okay, how can I keep this going?
Yeah. And you really kind of get in check with yourself. So the outside world, it's almost like building up a barrier. It's like building up a little bit of a barrier between you and the stressors and the triggers in the outside world because you've almost like put on your armor for the day in a way because you've gotten yourself connected and I worked for an individual who used to always say, your perception is your reality. So how you perceive the world is ultimately your reality. If you perceive the world from a negative standpoint, your reality will be negative. And I think I've really practiced that a lot in like spiritual learning and stuff, but I've never really tied it to meditation before, which seems ridiculous because it seems so obvious. But when you meditate, you're almost correcting your perspective or getting perspective, really. You're gaining perspective on what do you want from the day, and it's almost like you're powering up your intention for the day, or your intention for your practice, and you're changing that perspective, which then snowballs into changing your reality. So for me, I know, like, I struggle to keep even keeled through the day. I have a little bit of a struggle with like managing my range of emotions and chemical imbalances and stuff, and it's easier after I've meditated. And I think it's because I've put things into perspective. I've focused on my breathing and I've become more thankful for really being alive. I mean, in those moments, I'm like, I'm trying not to think about anything at all. So I'm like, well, now my brain's like, well, you're breathing. Just focus on your breathing. That means you're alive. You're breathing. You're alive. You're breathing. You're alive. And it's almost like now I'm like appreciative that I have breath, and then now I can go throughout my day just like a little bit less aggressive, I guess.
Well, and you took the time for yourself. Like you took moments for yourself, and that's something that like we tend to fill our days to the max. Like if we're not working, then we're like, what are we eating? And they're like, what does my dog want? Like what's going on my phone? Like I need to know what's going on my phone like 20 times a day. So
Yes.
I'm very busy.
I'm a very important person.
Yeah.
in my perspective.
Yeah. And that's like a great point too about your perspective, because when I feel like I'm super busy, I feel stressed out, and I feel like well, I just have to be stressed out because I have to get all this done. And lately I've actually been doing a Headspace course called Balance, and the description of it totally ties in with what you just said. It is working towards a more balanced mind to recognize calmness and become less reactive even in tough situations. And that is my goal. Like I don't want to feel a rush of anxiety or anger when someone confronts me about something. And that's what happens is I just go, why are you just throwing me this curveball, like getting me all riled up? But it's not, that's just me taking what they're saying in this perspective that they're coming at me, when it's like they're having a conversation with me, or they're saying, well, if you want this, then this needs to happen. And that's kind of how things work, right?
Yep. It's interesting too, because it's almost like it puts you in a place where even like curveballs or whatever aren't as unexpected, because you're almost like, I mean, anything can really happen today. I'm kind of ready for whatever's going to go on. I feel centered. And when you're not already out of balance, it's harder for things to knock you down. It's like if you're standing on a railing and I shove you over, you're probably going to fall because you're already kind of struggling to balance, as opposed to if you're standing on flat ground, it's harder to push you down. And it's funny because it's one of those things where I always kind of dismissed it. I always, like, even though I know it's supposed to be good, and I know so many people meditate that are successful, and I know that so many like yoga practices are very close to a meditation practice with the breathing and everything, I kind of dismissed it a little bit as, well, is it really going to be that beneficial for me, like in reality? Well, fun fact, it has been. I think that a lot of times we tend to find it easy to dismiss meditating because it's also easy to excuse, like, I just don't have the time. Like I just can't imagine even 3 minutes in my day of not being too busy to meditate. Like it's so easy to just say, you know what? I don't think that I have time. It's not going to be that big of a deal if I don't do it. But I've really started trying to push myself into looking at it as part of self-care, which we mentioned this in the last episode, and I will probably mention it 1,000 more times, probably today alone. But treating your mental health and preserving yourself in those ways and giving yourself that time, it really should be part of your self-care. Working out, eating good food, meditating, all of these things are ways that we can show ourselves a little bit of love and get through our cocooning phases.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one thing about taking that little bit of time is like you can literally integrate it into your daily activities. It doesn't have to be a sitting on the floor and lights off kind of kind of thing. I actually really love to meditate while laying down because I don't feel like I have to hold a posture. And I also wear an eye mask at sleep, like when I go to sleep sometimes, especially if I have TV going on because I don't want all that light distracting my eyes. And then like that just kind of calms me like a bird with like bird in a cage with a sheet over them.
Yeah.
Oh, this is me time.
I should try that. I should try to lay down and put on my eye mask and see if it, because even this far into doing it, like I mean, I've been doing it for a couple weeks now. So sometimes it still really is kind of a struggle to feel like I'm like holding my posture, and then I catch myself, my mind wanders. But I know that you and I talked about this before. Even you doing it for so long, even your mind wanders sometimes too, right?
Yeah, and I think it kind of depends on the day. Like I think it's funny with being indoors a lot more frequently and really going to almost nowhere. Um, I, my days are different, and I'm like, how are my days different? Like I'm in the same space, I'm doing the same things, and some days my head is just like racing way more than others. And so there are times where I literally just think, oh, I have to meditate, and then I go, oh, when have you ever felt worse after meditating? Like, what has it ever taken away something from your life? Never. So then I sit through it and my mind can wander and wander and wander. And I just have to, oh, okay, breath. So sometimes one thing that they say in these guided meditations, which I love that you can be like 3, 5, 10, 15 minutes. Like you don't have to be stuck there for 30 minutes. Is a thing called noting, where you basically acknowledge your thought or your feeling by saying, I'm having a thought. This is a thought. This is a feeling. So sometimes when you're like, oh, my back hurts. This is a feeling. And then you're like, oh man, I wonder what Vanessa's doing later today. Maybe I should call her back. I mean, I could probably fit it in between. This is a thought. And you kind of cut it off. And so you kind of cut off your thought by having the thought of labeling it. And then you kind of let it go. And it gets easier and easier to let those things go. And also strategy is counting your breaths. So you just think, I'm just going to count in on the, like 1 on the inhale, 2 on the exhale, and just do that to 10 and then start over. And it's so funny because some days I can do that no problem. Other days, thoughts happen even when I'm busy counting in my mind.
I think that's why it's so important to come up with like different ways to meditate too. Like obviously creating a consistent schedule and putting it as part of your daily schedule and having that consistency is really good because that builds patterns and that builds habits. But also Headspace, like you were telling me before, I didn't realize Headspace also offers the meditating while you're walking.
Yeah, so they have a whole section for, I mean, they have so many sections. My favorites are the SOS ones where they're only 3 minutes, and there's ones for being overwhelmed, feeling burnt out, panicking, using your temper, being in pain, and just having those 3 minutes to kind of get you through something. They have a whole section on sleep, which they have sleep casts where they have someone talking, like telling a story with background noise, and then they have some where it's just noise. I like the slow train where it's an older man who just has this very calming like voice. Like I think of like Batman and his butler, who I'm totally blanking on his
Is
name
it
right
Alfred?
now. Alfred, yes. It's like having Alfred tell you a nighttime story, like while you are pretending to ride on a train. And they just describe they describes the scenery that you're seeing. And then like just tells you this really light story. And now they have a whole movement section where you can do workouts with these trainers that are guiding you through like the movements and stuff. But the only one I've done so far is mindful cardio, which was just taking a walk. And so I can play that, plug my headphones on, and just go on a walk, and then just say, you know, like, take a deep breath, take a few deep breaths, and let it out, and acknowledge the sun's warmth on your body, and walk through. And are you hearing like birds or anything? Like, thank you, like thank yourself for taking the time to, you know, give yourself a little bit of attention, like, and then that's 10 minutes, and so it's like you can knock out a meditation, avoiding your phone, and a walk in 10 minutes.
All
And
at once.
all at once.
And I think for a lot of people who struggle to put meditation on their to-do list or struggle to put it in their schedule, I think that that is the perfect way to start. Put it with something that you're already going to do. If you're already planning on doing a walk for your exercise or to get out of the house, play your meditation while you walk, and then you've got two birds, one stone. Or like you said, you're also not looking at your phone most likely, so then you're really knocking three things off your list. Or if you can, putting it with your yoga practice. That's another thing that I've been trying to play around with. I'll start my yoga towards the end of like a meditation and kind of really focus more on my breathing and doing poses more like child's pose or corpse pose, where you're really just like laying there or sitting there. And then it's like two birds, one stone. And for someone like me who has a hard time sitting still just in general, I like to feel like I'm accomplishing a lot. And I know it's counterproductive to like challenge myself to accomplish my meditation, but by peppering it in with other things, I've actually been able to keep it consistent. Because I also do struggle to stay consistent. I do really well for like a week, and then the next week's something comes up. Like the flower petals fall off a little too fast outside, and then I'm like, now I'm feeling a little bit sideways about something, and I better just do something else. Excuse.
Yeah, like one thing that keeps me motivated is like after you meditate with Headspace, it's constantly tallying up the minutes that you've meditated into a big total. So I'm at like 5,000 minutes or something right now. And then it tells you how many streaks you've done. Like, so how many days in a row have you been meditating? So when I get up to like day 15, I'm like, oh, I can't ruin this streak because I don't want to take 3 minutes. And and it's like it's really about finding what's best for you, because when I started doing it at night, there were many times where I just forgot about it, and then I'd ruin my 5 day streak, and I'd be so mad because then you're like back to zero, okay? Like you didn't meditate at all last week, and you're like, no. It's just about being consistent, and that's a little bit of their incentive to keep you consistent. Like, we keeping track, and you can see your history, and you can see all the different types of meditations you've done. Like, there's non-guided ones, there's ones that are done by males, there's ones that are by females. I really like the one who's done by like the original founder, Andy. His voice is so calming to me. And they even have a Facebook group that I recently joined, which I think is awesome, especially during this time, this pandemic. Like, people have a place to like connect with other people, and they do group meditations, and I love doing that because they do it a few times, I guess a few times a day. Like, they'll just say, hey, there's a little blurb. It says it's next one's at 10:30, and then you can like wait and then just have music playing until the meditation starts. And then by the time you're done with the meditation, you can see that like 200 people had tuned in at the same time to do this time meditation with you.
Oh, that's great. I like that. Especially right now, because so many of us are feeling a little bit isolated, I think. And Facebook is such a dangerous hole to fall into. You can either find really great stuff or like the worst stuff for your mental health. And I love that idea though of being able to connect with people in such a positive space and meditating with others. It's almost like you're becoming part of like that greater mindset. It's like you're becoming part of something a little bit larger than yourself. And to me, that's really motivating too. I really like to feel like I'm part of something, but I very much enjoy doing it distanced as well. So
Yes.
I'm probably gonna go search out that Facebook page now, actually.
Yeah. But yeah, and right now too, with all the stress in our lives, it's like chronic stress, impairs our immune system and it makes any existing conditions you maybe have worse, right? So like you were telling me before how like, you have like eczema and stuff and you have something, you eat something that doesn't agree with you and you just like your skin just gets red, and same thing for me. Like I have too much sodium and then my body's just like puffed up and then it takes me days for to get kind of back to like a neutral level. And so um it's a by lowering your stress response, like mindfulness kind of gives you those like downstream effects through your body where you're just carrying on that practice of keeping stress low. And so when something does cause you to spike, you don't spike as hard as you would. And it's like funny because it ties in with how we were talking eat a balanced diet, like we've done so many times. And I noticed that when I go off of having a balanced diet, if I go off just for like a big meal, a heavy meal, or even just in a day, I might like tell I'm puffed, a little puffy or irritated or agitated and like full and cramped and all that stuff. But and then next day I can go back to more of a neutral level. Whereas if I do that for a few days, it takes me a few days to come back down. So it's like the more we practice these things that help us lower our stress, like it's kind of like taking medication. Like the more consistent you are with it, the better results you're gonna get from it.
Yeah. And it's funny because like I feel like that's something we all know. We all know that things take time, but in the back of our mind, and then in the front of our mind, we're like, yeah, but I kind of would really like to meditate one time and then feel like I'm fixed now. And it's funny, and I've always struggled with skin issues resulting from an incident when I was a kid. I got an infection and it caused my skin to just kind of go crazy. And I did just this week, I finally got a confirmation. I mean, and we're talking like 15 years I've been dealing with this. And I've had so many dermatologists tell me so many different things. And finally my dermatologist explained to me what is actually going on. And it's called genetic atopic dermatitis. And basically it's a combination between a genetic mutation, essentially. I have a genetic mutation, and then it was like triggered by the infection I had. So now what happens is I already am lacking a layer on my skin that most people have that I for some reason don't have. So I'm less protected by like my skin against basically everything in the world. And then my white blood cells are it's an autoimmune disorder, so my white blood cells freak out and they attack on contact. So what happens is that, like you said, I get really, really inflamed and then I break out in rashes pretty much all over, which I've I've just dealt with it for 15 years. So for me, it's hard to track too because it's over the years I've come to the conclusion that I'm allergic to everything. It's a combination of things that I eat and things that I touch. So we didn't really know how to deal with it. Well, he explained to me what it was and then prescribed me medicine, and the whole concept is that I have to spend like basically 2 weeks straight of like application and treatment to get myself out of a state of inflammation. And then from there I can prevent it. And it's so true that once you're in that, once you've sent your body into this tailspin of inflammation and reaction is what it is, you have to take the time to get yourself out of that, and then you can start to maintain. And I think it's funny because it translates to meditation too, because meditation can reduce inflammation, which could essentially benefit my skin as well. But also, I can apply the same concept. Would I look at my doctor and say like, no, I don't really want to spend 2 weeks making this stop? I you know, Like, that's like a long time to commit. Like, no, I very much would like my skin to, like, I have, and mine is it's a very extreme case of it. So it's extremely uncomfortable, extremely painful. I'm not going to look at him and say that 2 weeks is too long. Like, I'm going to put in the time and take the time to let it kick in. And I've had to really adjust my mindset about working out, about eating right, about meditating, all kind of in the same concept. And I know you actually brought that up when we were talking earlier about how a doctor would ask you the same thing. Like, if you had an infection, would you take the time to stop it? Would you take the time to take the medication and spend the 2 weeks to get it cleared up? Yes. So if you're also having a problem with centering yourself or controlling your emotions or whatever, and you know that meditation, 2 weeks straight of meditation can help, it's worth taking the time. It's just as important as a physical ailment.
Yeah.
In my case, it turns out it might actually benefit me because it can lower cortisol, which can help prevent inflammation, which is essentially the root cause of most of my issues, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if you put your body in a constant state of inflammation, which a lot of people do with consuming like overprocessed foods, is you adjust to that. And then, but your body's not really adjusted to it. It's just in a constant state of fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love the way you put that. Like you have been such a freaking trooper. I have seen your hands just look like someone just, cut your skin up. Like you were like honestly, like when Cameron used to be my husband used to be a dishwasher, like his hands would get so raw from being in like the soap and rubbing and the knives and all this stuff. And that wasn't even a skin condition. Like you could never do a job like that because you use the wrong hand lotion and your skin looks like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you were just like, well, I just have to manage it. And you didn't even know there was a treatment for it until you finally got a dermatologist that said, yes, this I know what this is. And I can help you get out of this state. And then you can be in maintenance mode that you thought you were being in.
And so many of us are in that mindset with our mental health. We're just so used to being stressed out. We're just so used to being in survival mode, especially now when
we're in survival mode.
3 to 4 months in a government enforced lockdown is not something that any of us have ever had to navigate before. And I can say that with like 100% guarantee, except maybe people who are on house arrest. I feel like that's the only time you can really slightly compare. None of us know how to navigate this. And to be in that constant state of survival mode, you almost start to get used to it and you almost start to desensitize yourself to it. And it's like, no, you don't have to accept it. There's things that you can do to help. And meditation is like, it's like the jumping board. It's like the diving board. It's like the first place to start. It's like a jumping off point. Start with meditation and so many things will like domino after that.
Exactly. We want to create a positive domino effect in our minds.
Exactly.
Which also, if it benefits our bodies too, then bonus.
I said, I think in the first or second episode, I always like to say you should always find something that's fun to do where fitness is like a byproduct of it. So you're accidentally working out while you're having fun. It's the same concept. If meditation is beneficial to your mind and it can help you physically as well as a byproduct, it's ultimately something that's worth practicing because you're getting more than one benefit out of it. You can't beat that.
Nope.
Especially when it really just consists of like staying quiet and sitting still for 5 minutes.
Right? It's just something that we don't practice as adults. Like, I feel like I had a lot of alone time as a teenager, like after school, after homework, and then you got a couple hours after dinner, and you just sit there, read a magazine, da da da. Like, I don't allow myself that time anymore. If anything, I zone out on Netflix, and it's like, where did 2 hours go? It's like, I could give myself 5 minutes of meditation.
Exactly. And it's so easy to make that excuse. I don't have time. Well, I did have time yesterday to scroll through Instagram for about 3 hours. I probably could have done 2 hours and 55 minutes. And then...
But yeah, well, Thanks, guys, for coming to our TED Talk on meditation.
If you're not already meditating, meditate.
Do it. I mean, I think this is as much motivation as we can give you on the subject.
Yes. And again, we're not sponsored by Headspace. They're not paying us to say this. Headspace, if you're listening, it's not that we're not willing. But if you're not, I think if you don't know how to meditate and you've never meditated before, or if you have and it's just been a long time, Headspace is a really, really, really easy way to jump in. It was so easy for me to start. It was like, it literally gave me like 3 starter ones that were like, hey, we're just going to tell you how you're supposed to do this. And then accidentally I meditated for 3 minutes. So
yeah, and I love that their app is they have a free version. Mm-hmm. And then once the pandemic kicked in and everyone was staying home around like March or April, they made it free for all healthcare workers. And like just the whole thing. And so it's like it's something that's nice that you can easily put it on your phone and it works. And they even have cute little graphic videos about like what noting is, or like what calming the mind means and stuff like that. And also thankfully we're in 2020, so you can go on YouTube and Google meditation and have probably millions of people lead you through a meditation, and you can stop them whenever you want. Like you can start and stop it, whatever. I mean, even listening to the same song on repeat while you do a task is like a form of meditation. It's you keeping yourself focused and keeping your mind clear of all these random monkey mind thoughts that we have. But yeah.
I think that now I'm like, maybe I should go meditate.
Yeah, Vanessa, I gotta go. I have a meditation in about 5 minutes. Before anyone knows that I've stopped recording this podcast and wants my attention.
So, yeah, if you're listening to us and you're struggling and you're having troubles being mindful, we highly recommend downloading Headspace. Like Crystal said, you can have a free version. That's what I use. I use the free version, and I don't feel limited in any way. I feel like it's perfectly fine free, and if you choose to pay for it, then great, you'll get more content. But it's so easy. There's really no excuse. But yeah, and I think until next time, that's all we've got today.
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.